Hello, welcome to the Self Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start Unit 4 Theoretical Analysis, and our topic is Trends Other than Postmodernism. But postmodernism itself, by its extreme reflexivity, was unable to expose the real basis of human inequality, the problems of diversity, and providing a critique of human situations of real inequality, human suffering, and exploitation are still valid theoretically well into the 21st century. The 1990s witnessed a growing interest in the philosophies just before the emergence of postmodernism, namely phenomenology, existentialism, and the hermeneutics. Baudrillard turned Marxist theory over by according infrastructural status to signifiers. According to him, in the period of late capitalism, there has been a fetishism of signifiers that is leading to creation of increased needs of consumption, that in turn leads to increased production. The signs that earlier in Marxist perspective were seen as part of superstructure trigger the economic process. In the modern world, advertisements are more important than class relations, and consumption is related to abstract need rather than real ones. The image assumes a higher grading than the material dimension of the article. A concept that has gained prominence in this era is that of hegemony, put forward by Gramsci. In his political writings, Gramsci situated dominance in the cultural process rather than brute power, showing how people act away from their own collective interests once they accept the ideological point of view of dominant groups of society. The later part of the 20th century saw scholars going into the finer dimensions of domination, and the works of Foucault have accepted widely as a critique of established knowledge, showing the link between the knowledge and power and the persuasive force of hegemony. The power of written word and the arts and that of public culture has been theoretically established as the field of cultural studies. Culture is now not viewed as a given condition, having an objective existence worthy of systematic description, but a site of contested identities, a vehicle for domination and also resistance. It becomes an instrument rather than an end product or given condition, and it manifests itself in people's aspirations. A trend in the social sciences is towards a more material view of the world, looking into the conditions of existence, following a more Marxist view than a rarefied post-modern views. The criticism of deconstruction has been that extreme deconstruction would take away the meaning of the existence to the extent that even the rationale for a social science would cease to exist. Since a divergence of views had existed earlier in the 20th century between the structuralists and the Marxists, while the former were in favor of semiotic structures or structures of mind, The latter saw reality in terms of material structures and economic exploitation. Perry Bourdieu, perhaps one of the best known thinkers of the contemporary times, tried to resolve the intellectual debates of the clash of points of view of Levi-Strauss, structuralism and Marxism. Bourdieu observed the divergence between the synchronistic, static and invariant nature of reality, conditioned by deep underlying unconscious mental structures that were by their very nature not subject to the dynamism of the human volition, as put forward by Levi-Strauss, and the conscious human subject, a product of history, as put forward by Marxism. In fact, Bourdieu attempted to demonstrate the effect over action produced by ideological structures. Bourdieu's theory of practice demonstrated how abstract norms are manifested in real practices and real time to create real inequalities among real people. In the present day context of globalization, culture and society are becoming more and more amorphous as concepts. Identities are no longer seen as closed and definitive, but contested, discordant, and disconstitutive of the disparate elements picked up both locally and globally. Traditions are no longer viewed as given, but as reinvented every time. Foucault's denunciation of Western forms of knowledge as an instrument of domination rather than an instrument of truth has dealt a blow to all that was sanctified in the name of science. Now science is no longer an objective system of truth, but a regional form of knowledge that had sought to supersede all other forms of knowledge by acts of force rather than reason. For social scientists, it has meant that one takes a fresh look at the creation of the research subject, noting the positions of the inequality between the observer and observed. For the psychologist, it meant that one review one's notion of normal and abnormal and think of them as cultural rather than absolute conditions. But this process of destructuring of truth has its bigger trump in that subjects have the option of refashioning themselves and resist the imposition of anything in the name of normal or given. The acceptance of diversity and the rejection of inequality have been a major effort of contemporary theory, reflecting and striving for a better world. This is the point when call for active participation in the process of understanding and subsequently fashioning the social reality all around us is gaining recognition at the beginning of the 21st century. Now let us wind up the session, and in the next session we will conclude the unit. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the self-learning podcast.